Well, everybody, it is Wednesday, June 19th, 2024, here on sweltering hot South Jersey time. This is episode number 159 of Material Issues. I'm Mark Hershberger of Pop Detective Records. As I said, I am in sweltering hot South Jersey at 93 degrees today. But back from his European and Scandinavian tour, where he's been away for a few weeks, there he is, the president of the International Pop Overthrow Festival, my good buddy, back home on the West Coast where it's middle of the afternoon. Good afternoon, David Bash. How the
Good
heck are you,
afternoon. Good evening, Mark Hershberger.
man? Good early evening. Good on you.
I don't know exactly what time it is because for 25 days I was either 8 or 9 hours ahead of now. I'm obviously extremely jet lagged. Which is the case every time I come back from the European trip, but more so this year because we were gone longer. We went to more cities, and it was all really great. I mean, you've heard a bit. You've heard a bit about IPO Liverpool and Copenhagen. Stockholm went well. Very big venue we were in called Encore. Maybe a little too big for IPO Stockholm, but we had decent crowds and the bands were great.
Yeah.
And Stockholm is a city I love. But I have to say, if I had to choose one of the three cities that we were in, along with Paris, which we went to in the interim for vacation, if I had to choose one of the four cities we were in to live, it would definitely be Copenhagen.
Yeah.
I mean, Stockholm would be fine too, but Copenhagen, there's just something really peaceful about it. Everyone speaks English. They've got enough convenience stores. Remember, I was talking about Paris having virtually none. A great selection of record shops, including the record store map. I should have brought that out to show.
And that's pretty cool.
And really, really nice people.
I'm part Danish. Maybe I'll retire to Copenhagen, and you agree to come join us.
Yeah, I would be more than happy to. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like it in LA, but if I had the money, and Reno was up for it, I would move there.
Was the exchange rate tough on you in Copenhagen? Was it? I know Stockholm's extremely expensive.
In Copenhagen, it wasn't that great. In Stockholm, it was very favorable to us.
Oh, okay.
For whatever reason, their crowns are weak against the dollar now. So buying stuff, especially all the records I bought, it was definitely favorable. But both cities are extremely expensive. And one thing I'm forgetting is that during the winter, it gets dark really late. Really early in those cities. It gets dark late now. And in fact, in Stockholm, it virtually never gets dark at this time of year. Even at 1 a.m, there's definitely some blue in the sky. So it's which is very cool. But the winter would be tough. But I don't know. I think I would still like to live there. But anyway, that's for another time, or not,
not.
Yesterday was a sad day in the world of baseball, losing to Say Hey Kid, who did live to 93, and that.
Yeah.
But that's a big part of our youth right there. Willie Mays exemplified baseball. Certainly a five-tool player, a true five-tool player.
Mm-hmm.
A bright guy, he was the Say Hey Kid. He exemplified the game, and it saddened me a bit that he was gone. I'm glad he lived a good life. They talk about the catch in the '54 series against Vic Wertz, and that is his most famous catch. But Mays always said that catch was overrated, that he'd made many better. And I believe him. And I've seen one, and I'm sure you know this one, the one where he and Bobby Bonds cross.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I've seen that one.
Yeah,
that catch is the best. In my opinion, it's my favorite catch I've ever seen by anybody, and that was amazing. I would definitely vote for that as at least I mean, I'm sure Mays made amazing catches that for which the film is gone, so we'll never see. But that one where he crosses with Bonds is
Well,
spectacular.
it's interesting. I read a big article on him. I forget where it was yesterday. I have to try to send it to you if you haven't seen it. But he talks about, he goes in depth as to how he played the game. And he was always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead, which he criticized the players of today. They don't think that way. And even he said, even that catch, he knew he had to get the ball into the infield because of where the runners were. And the catch was made because of his high school football as a wide receiver. He said, I used to catch balls over my shoulder running backwards like that routinely. So that made that catch very easy
now we're
for
talking
him.
about the Vic Wertz catch.
Yeah, the Vic Wertz catch.
One, yeah.
And but he always said, even when he was base running, if he knew he could score from first or something on a hit, and he knew where the ball was, he would slow down rounding third to go to home plate because he knew he could beat the ball there, but he wanted to give the batter that hit the ball a chance to get to second base. If he rounded the bases and got home quicker, they would get. And little things like that you think about.
No, he had a great
baseball strategy.
Really
yeah, it's amazing. Great player.
Amazing. Yeah, Willie Mays. Also, that name, Willie Mays. I love it. It always rolls off the tongue. It just says baseball all over it.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, you're right, Greg. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I have to admit, 1973, especially the World Series, was sad.
Yeah, a couple of those things that he muffed, but he said it in the article. He goes, "Listen, the grass was wet. Anybody could have slipped on that surface."
That may very well be. We'll never know. But just when you compare that to the Mays of yesteryear,
yeah.
But arguably the greatest to ever play the game. I'm not sure I would vote for him. I'd certainly have him in the top 3, but. You can make a case for it, but
it's tough.
We could talk.
We'll talk about that again later.
Let's bring another superstar on right now, a superstar of pop and of a jack of all trades and a master of all of them as well. At one time, he was an actor. He was on Saved by the Bell. We're gonna have to ask him if he got. We're gonna have to ask him if he got anywhere with Tiffany Amber Thiessen, but. Always a fantasy of mine. But he went into music. He had a band called The Boon with Joshua Clayton Felt, who ultimately became a member of School of Fish, which, you remember them on various MTV, VH1, all of that stuff. Yeah, when I first discovered his music, I saw his the album he had with his band the previous. It was called Unpop, which it really wasn't. It certainly was pop, and that's when I first got familiar with him. And then ultimately we connected online, and he played IPO LA early on, and he was a band artist manager too, and he had interestingly enough. He had a client that looked a lot like him called Andy Shmushkin. And I got to know Shmushkin as well. And he did me a nice favor. He helped put together a guerrilla night. That's GUE, not GOR, night at IPOLA in 2003, I think. Yeah, at Spaceland, which was one of the coolest clubs in LA. And that night featured a bunch of different subversive artists, including Andy Dick, who had a band at that time. So he wasn't doing comedy, he was doing music. Definitely a memorable night for a number of reasons. Over the years, he's put out several records, and he also has a radio show called Radio 8 Ball, which actually uses the 8 ball to help answer questions. I was a guest on it a long time ago, and I had a lot of fun. Anyway, he's got a new record called Recognize, De-Escalate, and Decode, which is full of all kinds of pop and non-pop gems. And we're going to play one of the pop gems on the show. But he's also an author, accidental initiation in the Kabbalistic tree of Olympia. Olympia being Olympia, Washington, the state capital where he lived for many, many years. But now he's in LA, and we're glad to have him. Would you please give a huge welcome to Material Issues? Welcome to Mr. Andras Jones.
And there he is.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me, David, and nice to meet you, Mark.
Nice to meet you too, my
Thanks
friend.
for being here.
Yeah, I just want to make, just in case anyone out there is like a big Saved by the Bell aficionado, I was actually in Good Morning Miss Bliss, which was the first season before they became the Juggernaut. I played a character named Deke Simmons who forces Screech to do his homework until, spoiler alert, it's revealed that he can't read. It's very sad.
That's really fine.
But I did get to act with Haley Mills, which is pretty amazing. But no, I'm happy to be here talking about music and about my new record, Recognize, De-Escalate, and Decode, and all things pop.
Where, to quote Bugs Bunny, where was you born?
I was born in Santa Cruz, California, but I have spent very, very little time there. I moved away. My folks, I was only there for a year, and then I spent a year in Medford, Massachusetts, and then my folks settled in Olympia, Washington, where I grew up.
What kind of music scene did Olympia have at that time? Obviously, with K Records and everything, it became famous. But prior to that, there wasn't really a major music scene. Interestingly, when I was a kid growing up there, Ricky Lee Jones was going to high school there. But she was not. That was before she had really become a songwriter or a musician in any serious way. And we ended up actually meeting and working together up there for a little while. Or I got to work. Really, I ended up working for her for a while, and. No, the music scene really, any music scene that happened there came out of the Evergreen State College. That's what drew my family there. My father was one of the founding faculty at the Evergreen State College, and Radio 8 Ball began on KAOS in Olympia at the radio station at Evergreen. But pretty much, I mean, the guys from Sub Pop went to Evergreen. The people, I mean, Calvin Johnson, who created K Records with others, they were all Evergreen people. I went to Evergreen when I was in I went there. Kerry Brownstein and I were in class together from Slater Kinney. So by the late '80s, well, really by the late '80s and the early '90s, there was a major punk, softy punk scene and sort of heavy metal-y punk scene that was happening out of there, and that's what Nirvana came out of, really. Nirvana was an Olympia band far more than they were a Seattle band. Wow, I actually didn't know that. Wow.
Well, if you were from what's the little town? Not Bremerton. I'm spacing on the shitty little town. No offense, but anyone who's from there would call it a shitty little town. Outside, it's like to the north of Olympia, and you have to drive down to Olympia. Olympia is the city that you would go to hang out. And if you're in high school, it's a 20-minute drive as opposed to Seattle is an hour and a half. And it's a much more, I mean, they certainly made it in Seattle, but they came out of Olympia very much. So it smelled like Teen Spirit is reference to some graffiti that was on a wall in an apartment that Cobain and Kathleen Hanna were sharing, or sharing. And I don't think they were maybe they weren't roommates, but it was just sort of like this crash paddy kind of place. Anyway, that's the scene that I wouldn't say that's the scene that I came out of, though. I think it's a scene like I'm punk in terms of my. I think maybe I'm punk in terms of my attitude, in terms of DIY and indie and, challenging hypocrisies. But musically, I have a lot more in common with, I don't know, James Taylor and They Might Be Giants than with Nirvana and Slater Kinney.
Nice cross there, James Taylor and They Might Be Giants. Yeah,
right. Well, I think right in the middle of that is Pete Townsend, and that's kind of my ground zero. Pete Townsend.
Cool.
And Ray Davies probably is another, like, sort of in that sort of nerdy but serious you know, and also trying to be beautiful. I think that's the part that I miss from punk, is the striving to create something beautiful, which I think is, I mean, it's that the world is so, can lack beauty in so many ways, and to be able to just go into a room and manufacture a world of beauty in music is, I don't know, it's what's always drawn me to it. And I think that's probably why I think both James Taylor and They Might Be Giants have like really beautiful moments in what they do.
They do.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, speaking of what drew you to music, at what age did you start playing something? Were you, did you take piano lessons? Who taught you guitar? What did you play early on, and where did that come from? Is that from your parents, or were you self-taught?
It's a mixture of both. When I was a kid, my mom made sure that I had piano lessons, and then I had guitar lessons, and I was in the school band. I played trumpet and cornet, and none of them with any passion, or none of them with any of the qualities that I consider to be what makes me a musician now. But I think it did give me like a comfort with the instruments and a little bit of technical facility. But then when I was in high school and I started to encounter some, real life difficulties that I hadn't really encountered before, and I discovered The Who, and I was just like, I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I know myself pretty well even then. I knew that if I asked someone to give me a guitar, I would not take it seriously. So I went out and I got a job. I went and found this guy who was hiring in the neighborhood to do yard work. He was actually he was the former swimming coach at Harvard, and he would tell stories about coaching Johnny Weissmuller and Jack Lemmon, who was also a championship swimmer. I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I worked for him for a while. I made enough money, and I bought myself this little Ibanez guitar. And I found a guitar store where they had a guitar teacher. I was like, I'm going to have them teach. I don't want to learn music. Don't teach me music. I want to learn how to play Behind Blue Eyes. Teach me how to play that. And she was like, okay, well, first I'm going to teach you how to play 8 days a week. I'm like, okay, I can hang with that. She taught me a few songs. Like, you need to learn these songs so you can learn the chords. But then eventually I learned to play Behind Blue Eyes. And then I learned a really sad lesson, which is that once you learn a song, you kind of steal some of its magic.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
interesting.
This Behind Blue Eyes has never meant as, I mean, I'm glad it brought me to playing, and I'm grateful to it, and I still like the song, but the song was this magical thing. Like, how do they go from being so quiet to so loud? And how does this take me to these all these places and make me feel all these things? And they're like, oh yeah, bar chords.
It's really, Andras, it's really interesting that you say that, because for many years, I have made a concerted effort not to know anything technical about music. I can't read it. I have no desire to. I don't know what chord is what note is what, anything, because I don't want to know how something was derived. I want music to hit me viscerally every time I hear it. And so ignorance is definitely bliss in my case, I think. So I get what you're saying, that once you learn how to play something, some of its magic is gone because you know too much. Magic, it's like what my friend Jeff says, God is everything that we can't answer. And for me, the magic of music is everything that I can't answer about it. It's all the stuff that I don't know that's wondrous. And so I see what you're saying. So I'm sorry.
Although I got to say, I have huge respect for my friends who are musicians for whom that's not the case, and for whom learning the music is actually the jumping off point to magic. Like, thinking of maybe the pinnacle of this would be like John Bryan back in the 90s and early aughts at the little Largo. Right. And what he would do with cover songs, would be nothing like what you think of as, someone playing the same old tired version of Hotel California. It would be the launch pad for him to explore so much. And there are the friends of mine who have that kind of musical mind. I think of it more of like a player's mind, a jazz like I was just a player's mind, not to put a genre on it at all. Those are the people I want to be around. Those people make my music sound much better all the time and make me a better musician when I can play with them. But as a writer, yeah, getting lost and not knowing stuff, and like the amount that I don't know allows me to go into a room and still, after 25, 30 years, 35 years of writing, I can still get pretty excited about a G chord. You know, just like a dog and a flashy, like, oh my God, whoa, that sounds so good. And if I sing this, and then I'm off to the races. And I think that a lot of my friends who are better players, the ones who are not adept writers, and many of them are, John Bryan, and he's not a friend. I've known him around a little bit, but like he's the sort of like the example of somebody who's a great writer and a great player, just sort of like, he's like the Willie Mays of pop in a lot of ways, a definite 5-tool player. But a lot of my friends who are really great musicians have a hard time writing because they know too much. They don't allow themselves to indulge in a cliche until it becomes their own, which is what I think a lot of really good songwriters do. It's like you steal from something else, and then you riff on it enough that it stops being that. You forget that it's that, but you kind of have to be like that Elvis Costello line. Don't you know how to be dumb? I always thought that was advice to songwriters. Like,
yeah. But
you think I'm smart, but I'm only smart because I know how to be dumb.
But yeah, on the other side of the coin, there's a guy that does a YouTube series. I can't remember the name of it, but he'll take a song, like say a disco song, and I've never been a disco fan. There are some things that are fun about it, but he'll break it down into every little bit of instrumentation, and you can hear all the tracks separated. And when he goes into that kind of detail as to how something to my ears sounded so simple, yet it is so many things layered in order to do that, the creativity and the ability to be able to layer things and make something very difficult sounds very simple. And then see how it's taken apart and was put in that, to me, blows my mind. I mean, you can be great songwriters, great musicians, but when you take it to that next level and you can be that creative in the layering process and making the sound what it is, that is just the next step that makes me just go, how do they do that?
Well, this is like my new record, Recognize, De-Escalate, and Decode. It's the first one that I produced on my own. So right. I had to contend with that, because you're absolutely right. Being a songwriter does not mean that you can write a great song and it will never sound good through speakers, because you don't know how to engage the science of sound. And now we have so much facility to like get in and tweak and fix and tweak and fix, and that can also be like sort of a dead end in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to let it breathe. And so you're absolutely right. And it is I like with the players I know, the people who are great. Well, the reason my record sounds as good as it does, if it does sound good at all, is because even though I recorded it in sometimes a lot of janky ways, I was able to work with people at different phases of the project where they dialed things in, helped me dial things in, or recommended like, okay, well, the next time because I did this record one song at a time, so over many, many years, which we could talk about why I did that. But part of what was fun about that was that each time I did it, the people I would work with, when we encountered things in my production, where limits of my production abilities, I could then be like, okay, well, where would you put a mic to get it right? Or which mic do you think? And then the next time it got better.
Who did you work with on this? Who are you talking about specifically?
My main production contact is a guy named Sheldon Gomberg, who mixed most of this record and my last record, All You Get. And he has just become sort of like a music. I almost called him a mentor, but that's we're too old for that to be the case. Like a musical big brother. in a lot of ways, and like just like a big brother would, kind of like ideally, like just encourage you, be there to help where you need help, and when you need one of his cool friends to come in and save the day, he has the right number to call. And a great studio and a great ear. I don't know if you know him. He's worked with Ricky Lee Jones, works with Ben Harper. He's the one. I've
heard the name, but I don't know him. No.
With Andras Jones, he produces a lot of the Sweet Relief records now.
Oh, okay.
He produced the Lowell George Sweet Relief record that I was just on, that just came out this last
Which
month.
I should have mentioned. I'm remiss.
Don't worry, I forgot to put it in my bio, and so it would have been I already gave you too many things to say. So there was him, and then when I started the record, I started it in Olympia with a couple of guys who were in a band with the guys from The Hard Way. You remember The Hard Way?
Yes, certainly do. Yeah,
they're from IPO. Scott Taylor and Skylar Blake. I worked with them on the songs "Own Your Lips" and "Record Store," and that was like in 2014, I think, and that was a janky little system. I mean, it's amazing, those songs, like that song "Record Store." The video for it got like 200,000.
Video's great.
Yeah, it definitely is.
And I'm just like, that is so funny because the way we record, that's a mono track. That's not even a stereo track. My deal with them was I bought them their Pro Tools system, and then they had to record 2 songs for me, and they worked for me for 3 years because it took so long for them to figure out the system and for us to make it all work. I definitely got my money's worth on that deal and those tracks. I just love them. I love them. And Peter David Connolly, who played at the IPO, that Gorilla Pop Night you're talking about with his band, the Monoreels, he plays drums on that.
I remember that.
And so in that case, you have like 4 producers in the room on that, because all 4 of us are to some degree producing our instrument and our own parts. And a lot of the record was made during COVID, so it was sending parts around. So the bass player would send me his track, so he produced his bass part, or the drummer would produce their drum part, or so I'm the producer a lot in the sense that I decided what went where, and I made people play it until I liked it. Like if I didn't like the part, I'd be like, okay, here's another $50, do it again. But so there was a lot of quality control that I exerted, but my style of production is I think I do come from an actor's standpoint in a way that I believe that the fun is in the give and take and in the improvisation. Like who you're working with determines what you're doing, as opposed to like I come in and I have my vision, and my vision is going to be this. My vision is, I love the way you play, man. I'm going to sing it to you. Like a lot of times I'm like, and I'd sing that over the part, and then that person would have to figure out how to do their thing over that. So it really is, it's I am the producer in this, that I was the final say, but I am more like a player captain of a team that I put together.
Now you mentioned you did this from an actor's standpoint. When you were a kid, did you have more of an ambition to be a musician or an actor?
I never. To me that is such. People have been asking me that question my whole life. It feels like, and I don't see them as different at all. I feel like it's like, to me, writing songs is like writing plays. And I've heard so many other writers of songs talk about it that way, whether it's Pete Townsend or Jim Morrison or, more modern references than that, fill it in. I mean, that we're writing little plays so that we can play them out on stage. And so, I mean, acting is a pretty disempowering gig in a lot of ways, because someone else has to write it.
Right.
And if you want to be an empowered actor, then you become a writer, a director, and a producer, which is kind of what I'm doing when I'm making my records and my songs. And I think that it's probably more like I need to write songs. for my own mental health. I don't, obviously I don't need to act for my own mental health because I haven't done it for many, many years. But if you ask me what I would, if someone came up to me today and were like, hey, do you want to act in a movie or play a gig? I mean, unless that gig was pretty sweet, I'd be like, acting in movies is very rare. And if someone asks you, that's the only chance you're going to get to do it. Whereas with music, and the reason I love it is because nobody can stop me from doing it. I can do it. Yeah. Nobody can gives me permission or has to say, okay. And if I want to go, and I've done it, I want to go out and play on the street. If I'm so hungry to play my song for people, I can do that. Yeah, and there's actually I could find the part of town where they allow people to do that. And I could sit on the street and play for an hour. Yeah. And you can't, like, as an actor, I mean, there are people who are going around acting all the time. It's a little bit annoying. And I don't mean and I don't mean like performing, but I mean, engaging in a dramatic way to situations that are not as dramatic.
I see what you're right.
As they are. And in a play, it's fun, and in reality, that's when you have to say recognize, de-escalate, and decode. That's why I wrote the record that I wrote, is because I've seen and encountered a lot of people acting without knowing they're acting a lot of angry passion at other people without knowing that what they're doing is engaging in a process called psychodrama. It's I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a kind of therapy where you act out your family dramas with people and then learn from them. And
I taught college psychology for 8 years, so I'm a little familiar.
Then don't you see a lot of people doing psychodrama, non-consensual psychodrama at other people all the time? And for me, that it is put in my brain this idea that if we could just recognize these situations when they come up, de-escalate them to the point where they're manageable, where there's not like no one's getting shunned or fired or arrested or labeled. We just figure out what's going on and decode it. Then you build society. Because without it, I feel like you're building the exact opposite. We're just like going around playing out psychodramas and labeling each other as toxic, which is it's a very scary place. And for me, when things get scary, I go in my room and I write songs. And that's what I've been doing for I guess the last couple of decades, writing these songs, encountering these kind of situations, wondering how can we, come on, people, how can we get this? These things are very small if we could just work through them.
Right. Yeah. And back to your point about, just the difference between acting and songwriting and recording. If you think of all the arts, acting is probably the least freeing of all the arts, because as a singer songwriter, you're doing what you're doing. Even as an indie artist, you're creating what you want to create. If you're a writer, you're writing what you want to write. If you're a painter, you're painting what you want to paint. But if you are an actor, and I'm not talking stand-up comedian as far as what the act that they're doing, but as a true actor, you're doing what somebody else wants you to do.
Yeah, you were talking about it being disempowering before.
Yeah, you're doing what the director is directing you to do. It's not so much freeing as the other parts of the arts, I think.
Yes, and there's a piece here which is, I'm going to make a slightly gross analogy, so cover your ears, children. But it's sort of like you can always masturbate. It's very empowering. But to convince someone to want to make love with you is much more difficult. But if someone does, that's where you should be. And I feel like acting is the same thing. If you are lucky enough to be chosen to be a part of someone's vision and enact that with other people who are very talented at it, there is it is the most empowering, most glorious. It is an incredible experience when it is right.
Yeah, I recently finished a short film. I had never been the lead actor in a short film. I've been a musician. I've been on stage a million times. I write. I do these kind of things, but I've never acted like that before. And it was thrilling. It was
right?
to do it right, and to do it making the director and the producers happy that you did it that way. Yeah, and that was quite the rush.
But if you get addicted to that, that's when it can be disempowering, because
right, there we go.
a podcast, this podcast is going to be here for you every week. It's very creative. I'm sure it's very creative for you, and it is. It's like, so yeah. Going back to your question, David, it's so hard for me to choose, because to me, you don't have to. You never have to choose. And the one time I chose, I made I did choose music over acting, and it was not the right choice to make at that time. Yeah.
So I think the question was more as a kid, what did you want to do the most?
As a kid, I wanted to be Willie Mays, to be honest. Bringing it back, as a kid, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. I wanted to be.
You never expect that. You never expect to hear that from, stereotypically the musician was the guy who couldn't play sports, who had no interest.
I didn't say I was good at it. I wanted to.
No, but a lot of them really hated sports, hated jobs.
By the time, if you had met me as a sophomore in high school, after I had been cut like 3 years in a row and had jocks be shitty to me, you would have met someone who hated it. It took me 10 years to get back to sport. It took the 95 Mariners, those beautiful 1995 Mariners, to bring me back and remind me that I love baseball. You want to hear a crazy story about it?
So don't remind me, please.
Man, you're gonna love this. So that game, that 1995 playoff, my band, The Previous, had played a show at the organic farm at Evergreen that afternoon, and they gave us acid. And I took my tab up to the Kingdom, and I dropped acid at that game, which is, I don't recommend I've tried, don't do it. A baseball game is a terrible place to take psychedelics. But in this case, I had the most awesome, like Doc Ellis, LSD, baseball experience. The Kingdom is a closed space. The Seattle had never won anything, and when Edgar hit that double, and I'm sorry, David, I know it probably, but you have a lot of great Yankee memories.
I'm teasing, of course.
But that was one of the great psychedelic experiences, one of the great baseball experiences, one of the great Northwest experiences, and yeah.
What did the field? Were you seeing? Were you seeing colors and all that crap?
The one thing what I remember, I was just feeling. Mostly, I was feeling it. But what I do remember is Ken Griffey hit a home run in like the 7th or 8th inning, and we were in the 3rd deck. And I swear, there was a point where it just stopped insane, and I could just see the lasers.
Everything stopped.
It was so beautiful.
It's like,
whenever anyone says Edgar's double, there's a part of me that's like has this little flashback, this little tingle, and if you're from the Northwest, you hear Edgar's double a lot. So,
there's an album title for you, right? Edgar's Double, and people are like,
Edgar's
what?
Yeah.
Everyone will think like, who's Edgar, and how do you look like him?
Yeah, we'll give that one to Dan Byrne. That's a Dan Byrne.
Great stuff. Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
Hey, and by the way, I don't want to go down too much down the baseball rabbit hole, but I know you were talking about great catches, and I wasn't going to bring this up because I'm not a Yankee fan, and I don't want to steal any of Mays' thunder. But what the greatest thing I ever saw any player do on a field was Derek Jeter and that backup behind home plate, the toss that against the A's in that one playoff game was the most insane heads-up thing I've ever seen. And the fact that it just happened like not even on the actual playing diamond makes it even more spectacular. But let's talk about rock and roll. People are going to get sick of talking about baseball. Good God. We were talking about acid. That was fine. But now we're talking about pure playoff games between the Yankees and the A's. Come on.
Well, what I do want to mention, though, is for people to tune in, and maybe they're not familiar with your body of work, previouslyyours.com is the website where they can find out everything. I'm going to scroll that across the bottom right now, because there might be people that view this and go, who's Andras Jones? Where do I find? And here it is, previouslyyours.com.
Everything's there.
Everything you want to know. Which also links to radio8ball.com. I've got that scrolling along the bottom. You've been doing that for a long time, which I just watched.
No, I don't want to interrupt you.
Well, I have to ask this, Andres. Yeah, since we were talking about previously years, I mentioned that my first experience with your music was the previous Unpop. I remember, around the time that came out, pop was anathema at major labels, especially with young bands. And forget about power pop. You did not want to be thought of that way, even though your music would have fit in that genre, because labels would have said, you're retro. We don't want that. We want new. We want happening. Did you name the album Unpop because you didn't want to be thought of as pop, or was that some other?
No. I've never, the record companies have never been my audience. That is never, like, to me, maybe at the very beginning when I thought that they would be interested in something that was kind of original, but after a few conversations, and this is not to say that I haven't met wonderful people who work at labels, but yeah, that's never been the point of making a record for me ever. No, Unpop was really about being unpopular. It's a record about being an unpopular kid, and it's also a record, and that's also a pop record that I think has a little bit of some edge. I mean, maybe it's the kind of pop that I like. I like The Who. I think of The Who as pop, but it's definitely kind of a jagged, angry, right, guitar smashing kind of pop, which is not what you think of when you think of the Archies, So, and then I don't know there's also a theme in it where Mount St. Helens and the eruption of Mount St. Helens is a visual theme, which was also it was like a big moment in my life as a young person in the Northwest. So there's also this idea of like uncorking, unpop, like, okay. And then what's going to come out is, the whole mountain.
I like that. Yeah.
We're talking. I just wanted to say,
all of your stuff is edgy, Andras. I have to say that. All of it is.
And I should to get a little bit off of my edge and be a good promoter of myself. I should to let people know I'm playing on June 27th at the Whiskey. I haven't played the Whiskey ever in my life.
Oh wow!
Not that I wouldn't want to. It's a very historic venue, but in the whole time that I was coming up in LA, it was a place where when I was younger, it was more of a hair metal-y kind of scene up there. Oh, yeah. That's when I was making this unpop music. And recently I found out that there's a fan of Nightmare on Elm Street who books the stuff there. And he booked me as the headliner. He was like, you want to headline a night at the Whiskey? And I'm like, well, yeah and no. And what are the details? He's like, well, you go on at like 10:30. I'm like, can I headline at 7? My crowd won't.
We're all old now.
Is that because you were in Nightmare on Elm Street 4? There was this association, and okay, all right.
And he knows my music. He saw me promote. He saw the video for Record Store and the other stuff, so he likes the music. But I think he knows me as the guy from Nightmare.
Not from Saved by the Bell. Not from.
I go to a lot of conventions to sign autographs and stuff because of Nightmare on Elm Street. There aren't a lot of Saved by the Bell conventions. The Nightmare on Elm Street thing, the horror thing, is a genuine, massive cult, massive popular cult in a way that baseball is, and in a way that a lot of really good films or TV series just they don't have that same kind of very, very long tail.
Yeah, indeed.
Which is kind of perfect for me because my dad was a dream psychologist. So I grew up in a world of dreams.
I wanted to mention that because I from time to time I've tuned into Radio 8 Ball, which is a fantastic podcast. But in preparation of this, of what we're doing right now, Material Issues, I watched that International Association of Study of Dreams with Bart Davenport. Hi, Sigmund.
Oh yeah.
Man, that was a good program, and Bart is fantastic, and it just kept me fascinated. Yeah, I was familiar with. I was familiar with. I mean, familiar, and but that I knew the name. So when I saw that was together on that episode, it's just wonderful, man. He's just so good, and
he was part of the Gorilla Night that Shmushkin put together.
Really good. Yeah. So if anybody hasn't seen that, again, I'm going to run that across the bottom, radio8ball.com. It's been around a long time and just fascinating podcast that you do.
What date? I'm sorry. What? Just so I have it. What date did you say you're playing the whiskey?
Thursday, June 27th. Oh. So in about 9 days from today, and I'm going to have some great musicians playing with me. It'll be a weird little set. We're not going to have a full-on rhythm section, but you'll be surprised. There are members of All Day Sucker, the Bird and the Bee touring band, other illustrious folks.
Is it Morty Coyle or Jordan Summers?
Well, it's Jordan. No, Jordan's going to be joining me on keyboards. I used to know those guys when they were the Imposters back in the late 80s and early 90s, and we used to play together. They're one of my favorite LA bands. They're just
All Day Sucker's awesome.
So good. Yeah,
we've had them at IPO a few times. They're
great. Morty's one of the best frontmen I know. It drives him mad, and that's what you need in a frontman. He can't, just like I can't help but write songs, and he can't help but write songs. He's the genuine article, and that means,
I love his videos
everything.
I love his videos with his daughter when they're in the car singing stuff on the radio or whatever. It's very precious.
Yeah. Well, look out! I'm sure if she wants to, she's going to conquer this town.
Oh, really? She's
still young enough. Let's not put it on her, but it's a lot of talent in that gene pool.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, while we're talking about performance coming up, let's talk about this new album, Recognize, De-Escalate, and Decode, man. I've been listening to it nonstop for the last few days, again, in preparation for Material Issues. I love Dylan and Moses. I thought that song just...
we were talking about that being on the IPO CD. It turned out a different track, which I want to play, will be on there. But anyway, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just saying it can be found through previouslyyours.com, probably all the usual places. But man, it takes you on quite a ride. Get Out of My Head's a great song. I think Olympia's Secret is what David is talking about coming up here. It's just all really well done, but goes in jagged different places, man. And as you said, very, very cool. Very cool release. I'm glad I turned on to it. I'm glad I turned on to it. I hope people check it out. It's well worth the time. Yeah.
Well, we'll see how the world reacts to Dylan and Moses. I'm going to be releasing a video and releasing it as a single with a video in I think in August, and that's a song that when I introduce it at shows, I say this is a song that cost me a lot, but it's free for you. And I don't mean just financially. There are a lot of people. There was one producer I sent it to who said I wouldn't touch this song with a 10-foot pole, which led to him not wanting to have anything to do with me. I had a friend who worked on it. I had several people who worked on the song until they realized what the song was about and then made a hasty exit. And it got me very scared that what I think is it's a song that is like Dylan and Moses is about, for me, it's about growing up with the Alan Farrow drama and realizing at a certain point that all the kids of that are like they're my generation. They're like, and I've lived, like, their trauma is my trauma in a certain way. And so I'm just writing a song that's really just saying the names of all of the people in the story and not just necessarily the ones we hear of. And so many people along the way got me so scared that the world would respond so negatively. And other than one person in Missoula who did shout me down at a show and tell me I was fucked up for singing it, for the most part, the response has been really just very positive to the song. Yeah. And it's one of those things about, it's sort of a lesson for me, that this song, every song kind of teaches you a lesson. And for me, the lesson in this song is that if you have to do it, which I definitely felt from the second I wrote it, that I had to do this song.
Right.
You should. And if you do choose to do that, the universe will throw a lot of scary dragons in your face saying, no, don't do it. What'll everyone say? I can't be your friend anymore. I can't be associated with you. Look, I'm worried about you, Andras. But if you are driven, you gotta follow it through. And, talking about Jordan Summers, he's I know we're not going to play the song. We'll play Olympia's Secret, but there's a very funny thing. And when I first pitched him the song, he was just like, I love it. I want to do it. But what you got to do is you got to put a clarinet on it, because Woody and the clarinet. And I'm like, No, man, that's too obvious. I'm not going to do that. And then as I'm building the track, we get to this point and I was like, oh, you know what? I think I want to have a saxophone solo on this one part. And because I want it to be like the beginning or like the end of a TV theme show, like at the end of Cheers, like they have that like they have some like little horn stinger, and I'm having him play it, and he's like, I can't get the tone you want. Maybe if I played the clarinet, and in my head I'm going, oh no, it all has a life of its own. And he played the clarinet and he nailed it right away, and I was like, oh my God, Jordan's a genius.
But would you agree, Andras, that when people say or back away from telling you to do a song like Dylan and Moses, and you throw it out there in this day and age with the way the music business and the world is, do you think it is a time and place where throwing something out like that song out there is much more possible and less risk now than it would be, say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? That kind of
I don't know. I feel like the opposite, but maybe really? I feel like people, it's that recognize, de-escalate, and decode thing. I feel like people are on such high alert for toxic things or people who don't even know if we were to start to unpack the Woody Allen, Mia Farrow drama here, it might get contentious, or it might get contentious in your comment section. Because I think there's a lot of people who are having the same experience that I'm writing about. Whether or not you are familiar, to the extent that you're familiar with the story, you're going to project yourself onto it. And all of us, including myself, projecting ourselves onto it, know nothing. So if we're going to get passionate and start calling each other names about it, we're but that's what happens. And I feel like we're in a time where, I'm putting it to the test, I guess. We'll see. I think we are living in a McCarthyite-esque kind of time. And the way you test whether or not you are is you go out and you associate with known communists, or like people who are accused communists. And then you say, well, if I can be free, then I can be free to associate with this friend who is being called a communist because they oppose lynching, or because whatever thing you got called a communist for in the 50s. And now it's a time to, to throw your arms around canceled people, I think, because I'll certainly be judicious about it. I don't think it's necessary to, although if you believe in Dead Man Walking, then, and that's a beautiful story, then there is something to be said for throwing your arms around even the most noxious, toxic human being possible. because there is some value in every human being. And
Except
I don't
for
know if that's really.
except for Donald Trump, but we won't.
I see. I get that if you're going to live that, if you're going to believe that there's value in every human life, then I appreciate the joke, and there's certainly a place for that. But if from the standpoint of what I'm saying, no, you still have to embrace. Again, embracing someone's humanity doesn't mean supporting everything they do.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas, but in Woody Allen's case, I do support everything he does.
And I was worried about ordering this Russian panoramic film camera I ordered last week. I'm like, oh damn, it's a Russian camera. But throw caution to the wind. I'm getting it. And
look, I mean, it's all about. I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. It's the same principle.
Well, and the thing is, that's a principle that I feel like used to be more in vogue than it is now.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Yeah, don't get David started. Yeah.
No, don't get me started on PC or woke or any of that. But
I mean, again, there's value in like it depends what you mean by it. Like there's value in letting someone else tell you. Like I don't like it when you say this; it hurts my feelings. And I would like to awaken you to the fact that when you say this, it hurts me. Thank you for telling me. I'm awakened to that fact.
That's okay.
If you're a shamer, to me, it's like if you are a shamer, then you're just like the church lady. That's a church lady thing. Like I'm so righteous, and you're with Satan. It's like then you're not that righteous. If you're judging me, you're not that righteous, or you're judging anyone but yourself. If you're out there holding yourself accountable, that's great. If you're holding other people accountable, footloose.
What was Ricky Gervais? I was going to say, what was Ricky Gervais saying the other day? I saw a little clip of him in Modern Day Psychology. A guy goes into his therapist and says, "I feel like a cucumber," and the therapist says, "Then that's what you are." That was it.
Well, you know what? You should be an actor then. I mean, that's like an actor. Like if the director tells me I'm a cucumber, I'm a cucumber.
That's what you are, yeah.
Until it says cut, then I can, be something else.
The Beatles Revival Band, which is a Beatles influenced band from Germany, has a song called Cucumber. And it's a great Beatles song, but lyrically, it's about a use of a cucumber that we won't talk about here. Let's put it that way. But let's talk about Olympia's Secret, because as a guy who was brought up on Top 40 radio, there's nothing more important to me than a catchy chorus, a killer chorus with a great hook. And this song definitely has that. That's what drew me to it the most on the album. And that's why I was really, really, really thrilled when you agreed to let that be the track of yours that was on this year's IPO CD. And I would love to play it right now, if that's okay with you. So here we go from Recognize, De-Escalate, and Decode, Andras Jones with Olympia's Secret.
If you knew Olympia's secret, do you think that you could keep it? And if you knew Olympia's secret, everything might change. Because back when both her legs were sturdy, she never thought of herself as dirty. But now she's only 32 and she's so scared of you. And what you might do if you knew, if you knew, if you knew Olympia's secret. Because if she was a famous stripper, she'd never get the same props as a dead rock singer. And if you knew Olympia's secret, you might call her names. God, it would be so strange if you knew, if you knew, God, it would be so strange if you knew, if you knew all it be a secret, only
And you know, like a lot of your songs, I mean, an indelible chorus. It's one that will stick in your head long after the song's over, and edgy, especially at the beginning and at the end. I mean, you know, you're letting people know that you're rock and roll also. So it's great.
Yeah, really good.
Thank you.
I
That's
love the wall of guitars. I love the wall of guitars. I love the vocal. The vocal sound is fantastic. Of course, that last note's really good too. That's different. It's different.
well, a couple things about that song that I think are kind of interesting to know. Listen to it. I just was reminded that because it kind of got away from where I originally pitched it in my mind. It was very much a Laws song. You know the band The Laws? Remember The Laws?
Very well. Liverpool.
I love them so much. And this was very much like a Laws type song. But then a Laws song is also kind of a hooey, kinky kind of song as well. So that's already in there. Two things that I think are important to know that are important about the song in the context of the record, Recognize, De-Escalate, and Decode, is that a lot of I think when we talk about that urge to shame or call people toxic or whatever, that we imagine that the targets of that are usually, I guess men who look like us, you know, middle-aged white guys who, you know, whatever, who can't deal with the future or whatever. But in my experience, shamers and bullies pick on men and women, pick on they pick on whoever they can pick on. And a lot of the songs on this record are about bullying. And some of the songs are about the bullying that's aimed at women as much as at men, because in my experience, the people who are bullies don't really care. They may say they're doing it on behalf of their sisters or their brothers or the whatever, but what they're doing it, again, is they're doing their psychodrama of abuse on easy targets. So it's not usually one gender against another gender. It's usually someone who's popular against someone who's unpopular. And that's again, we're back to unpop. They say everyone just writes the same thing over and over again. And another thing that I feel like I want to be really clear about with this song is the reason this song sounds so great is because of Ken Stringfellow of the Posies. Yeah. I recorded the rhythms tracks with Jimmy Paxson and Sebastian Steinberg, amazing guys who Sheldon Gomber hooked me up with. And Sebastian is so funny and smart, and he's doing this like Tears of a Clown bass line in the middle of it with like, so it's like totally maximum R&B. And Jimmy's such a, like they both got the assignment of like bringing the Who thing to it, but Ken's like me. He's like a Pete Townsend nerd. He grew up on him, and just synchronistically, we came into contact with each other. I went up to his studio in Seattle, and like his guitars, and he's singing that Olympia, that high, that really yelling clean, like that's a pure Posies color that was in there. And you know, and you know, Ken's had gone through some difficulties in the last few years, and getting to know him and hear his story. He's coming out with a new record this year, and I hope he gets an opportunity to I hope people give him an opportunity to talk about his experience in all of this, because again, what I'm saying, like sort of what I was saying before, is like if we can recognize and de-escalate and decode these situations, because from a place of being curious about what's really going on, we don't have to have a world of enemies and, you know, of abusers and victims and enemies and friends and who we're loyal to and who we're not, and just be like, hey, we're all messed up and trying to figure out stuff, and why don't we get into be excited about the complexity. But I was just say, like, if you like this song, more than the other songs on the record, particularly this and Get Out of My Head, owe a huge debt to his creativity and his sensitivity as a. He wasn't producing it, but in a lot of ways, he came in as a co-producer on those tracks in terms of in doing the sort of the John Bryan thing of just like being a whirling dervish of talent who just like sprayed all over the record, and you're like, oh my God, this is so much better than I could have ever imagined. So
that's very cool.
No, I agree with you. I hope he gets the opportunity to. I hope he gets the opportunity to be heard. I hope he hasn't been canceled by. I know it's unrealistic to say that he hasn't by anyone, but I hope it's not too many people. I hope he has a chance to redeem himself in the hearts of the music community.
What I would say is he doesn't need to redeem himself. I hope people give him an opportunity to hear what his experience has been through all of this. I think, you know, I'm saying because I know it's an amazing thing, and this is something I guess we're kind of wading into this. The thing about cancellation is I think that once enough people have been canceled or have had people who are close to them who are canceled, and I'm not talking about famous people, I'm talking about your friend who like works as a bartender or works as a bus driver, and this could be a man or a woman or someone who's don't get the toxic picture of a canceled person in your mind. Think of a friend who's falsely accused by someone who doesn't know them that well and misinterprets something or whatever. And there are also real things, you know, you can't tell the difference between a real thing and a phony thing or a psychodrama unless you're willing to recognize, de-escalate it, and decode it. And when enough people have had this experience happen to them, and I hope on a small enough scale that they don't, you know, it's not a life ruiner. I think we start to become more complex as a society, I hope, in dealing with the complexities in a different way than just saying, you know.
One detrimental thing social media has done is it's created a world of reactors instead of de-escalators and decoders. We immediately react and make our opinions heard, and if we had time to step back from it and look at it from a more logical perspective, maybe we wouldn't have said what we said. It's amazing how many things after we recognize, de-escalate, and decode them, we wish we could have taken back from what we said on social media. And I'm hoping in the case of Ken Stringfellow that does apply.
Yeah, and you know what? And if I don't think he is, but if you really think he's guilty, then you should be very curious to hear what he has to say.
I agree.
Sure. Yeah, good point.
If you think someone's guilty and then you're not curious about what they have to say, that tells me a lot more about who you are than anything about them. You know, I'm scared of you because someone could just whisper something in your ear about me and you wouldn't even be curious to ask me about it.
Right.
And that's like,
oh yeah. Done.
End of story. I think we've all been victims of that in our lives with certain people who used to be part of our lives and aren't anymore because they didn't want to hear your explanation.
Yeah, and I think, and again, when you think of that, I just don't want you to. I think because we're three middle-aged white guys here talking about this, to think that we're talking on behalf of a constituency that looks like us. And what I'm saying is, bullying. The reason everyone can relate to it is because everyone has faced it. People who are strong now were at one point the kicking, you know, the one who was kicked by someone who was stronger. And if the lesson you learn from that is to like replay that psychodrama all over and over and over again, you know, this is why I think that the recognizing, de-escalating, and decoding really needs to come from from the rest of us, from the audience for it. Because when you're in the midst of it, when you're triggered, and I get triggered, I wrote recognize, de-escalate, and decode because I have to be constantly recognizing, de-escalating, and decoding my own brain from getting, you know, mad at potential friends for misinterpretations of things a lot of times online.
Sure.
And
it's not easy to do. That's an everyday, almost every moment of living, breathing, and being to recognize and do that, you know. because there's so many different directions you can go, and you have to catch yourself, you know.
Well, you have to live in your own brain, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the value of these psychodramas. Like, there's a catharsis that comes from them. Sure. I get it, but eventually, like, I think part of becoming mature is recognizing and de-escalating and decoding situations, because people are valuable. Even people who you may not like can be really valuable in your community. And when, you know, I don't want to talk about a.
I'm always having to explain to people that people are much more complex than we think, and there's more than one side to them. And I think this happened more than ever around 2020, when everyone was posting about, you know, I hate conservatives, I hate liberals, blah blah blah. I wouldn't be friends with this person. There's nothing. If they embrace this doctrine, then they're evil completely, and there's no. It's like, no, that's not true at all. That same person could be very charitable. That same person could be the first one to call you when you're in the hospital. So stop dismissing people because of that. Everyone's multifaceted, but you know, sometimes we forget that. And
recognizing those that do not forget that is one side of the story. Recognizing the large percentage of those that do not, and you just shake your head and go, oh my gosh, you know.
When you think about it, we treat each other we treat our enemies like we're the people we make into our enemies, as if they are very, very powerful. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, none of us, like in terms of the things that we disagree about vehemently online, none of us has any real power to affect those, like, whatever, the Middle East or racism or, you know, toxic fill in the blank.
Yeah.
We don't have the power, but there is one thing we have power to control, which is our own minds and how we engage with another person. Yeah. It's like the only place in our lives where most of us actually have any power to make the world a better or worse place. And we are just squandering it constantly on the pyre of some cause that we can't affect at all. You know, growing up in Olympia, I saw that all the time. You know, it's a very small, safe town where people are very convinced that they're very right about a lot of global issues that don't really affect them other than in their conversations. And I watched people burn each other, burn their neighbors, not literally burn, but socially burn each other over, and this is before social media, before the internet, you know, just with small town whisper stuff. So it's not new, but it has become that thing that I saw in Olympia, in a little small progressive town, feels like now the cloud that we're all living in.
But also the power of looking at those that, you know, don't look at life that way is the fact that you can wonder, you know, why they are that way, and then you begin to see that there are reasons why people are that way, and then the fact that you can see the whole is what makes you special to do that, because there's a lot of reasons, as David said. There's many reasons why somebody is the way they are, and you have to understand and accept and, you know, decode everything that's going on, which is you know, that's a gift to be able to do that too.
This intellectual exercise has been absolutely wonderful and enlightening and mind expanding. But we need to head into
You're a good host.
And I just want to thank you so much, Andras, for being on, and you know, everyone pick up, recognize, de-escalate, and decode, and go. It's
right across the bottom, previouslyyours.com. That's where you can find out everything, pick up everything, see what's going on in Andras' world. Not only will he be playing the
Whiskey on June 27th, but he will be playing International Pop Overthrow LA on August 4th at Redwood Bar. So, and it will
with a whole bunch of Joneses. If you are a Jones fetishist,
oh, that's right,
this is your show. David got really, I don't know if you were like smoking some wacky weed or whatever when you were making the schedule, but you're like, I'm just going to put all the Joneses together on it and see what happens, like the usual suspects.
He was jonesing for it.
I was jonesing. No, it was nothing I had initially planned. I think for scheduling reasons, I ended up putting you and Blake Jones together, and I said, "Wait a minute, we've also got," and then it's springboarded from there. That was it.
You can't do that with the Andrases, so I'm happy. I'm happy to be that I have at least one part of my name that makes me a part of a community.
Yeah,
good stuff. Yeah.
Well,
best of luck with the album, man. It's really good stuff. I hope everybody picks it up or listens to it and gets into it and digs it because it's really well worth the time.
Well, I've known David for a long time, and I really appreciate you for inviting me, David. But yeah, it's been great getting to meet you and know you, Mark, a little bit. And I hope we have time to talk more about music. Maybe at IPO sometime.
Indeed. I look forward to it. But have a great one. Best of luck. Best wishes with Radio 8 Ball. That's been around forever. It's a great program, so people need to check that out at radio8ball.com. Scrolling across the bottom, Andras Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Andras.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Well, there you have it, my friend.
That was like sitting in a seminar.
Well, I mean,
I missed that.
You told me you've known him for a long time, and you guaranteed that we would have a great time, and we absolutely did. Very stimulating conversation. The album is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. So, opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I hope it opens people's eyes that watch this program and they check it out as well. And great stuff.
I hope so,
great
too.
Stuff.
Wonderful. Well, we've got a few great guests coming up.
Yeah, we do.
So next, what is today? The 18th or 19th? I've lost track.
Today's the 19th. You're still in Scandinavia time.
It's true. It's actually officially the 20th in Scandinavia. It's 1:18 in the morning there.
You're still in tomorrow.
I still am, no doubt. But on the 26th U.S. time, we will have as our guest. She was a member of one of the coolest alternative, as they called them back then, college radio, as they also call them, a band's Game Theory. Masterminded by Scott Miller for all those years, had some amazing albums. She was a member for a few years and also put her own band together called Hex, who released a wonderful album in 1990. She's also an author, and she's a true intellectual as well. And it'll be great to have Donette Thayer as our guest on Material Issues on June 26th. The following week, July 3rd is open, so we'll probably keep it that way. So you and I,
we need a night off right before the holiday there, the July 4th, where we'll just do some Stump the Bash and some goofy stuff and talk about new releases and music. I think that'll be good to do for the July 4th holiday.
It will. Oh, that's true. That's right. It's right near the holiday. I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah. On July 10th, we have, this is his second appearance, although his first one by himself. We have the author, Steve W. Loudon, coming up, also known as Steve Coulter, drummer for Czar, and why do I always forget the name of his most current?
The Brothers Steve.
It drives me nuts that I have that mental block, and I love that album also. But, so I don't know why, but at any rate, he's going to be talking more of his his author hat that he wears. He's written books on power pop, on punk, on the LA scene from the mid '90s, the one that really springboarded IPO. He'll be another really entertaining, informative guest. And then on the following week, July 17th, we'll have a gentleman who was part of the early pop scene, late 1990s, early 2000s. He put out a couple of records and then just went on hiatus a bit, but now he's back with a brand new album, which I thought I had in my hand, but I don't. This is still why I'm still in Stockholm, Spaceville right now. Do you have a copy?
I don't have a copy in front of me, but it's his new release on Parasol. David said, has it somewhere, but he's building this one up. It's good. I love it. I don't know how David finds anything. If anybody's ever been to David's house, it's like a museum of CDs and vinyl and box sets. It's incredible that he knows where it's at.
Museum, but here's the new album, Top of the
Yeah.
World by Mr. Mark Bassino.
Yeah.
He will be our guest on Material Issues. And there are a lot, he is a pop meister, and there are a lot of great tracks on this.
Yeah.
So
on
we'll
Parasol,
be
it's
talking about that, and on a label that had been, I assume, was defunct for all these years. I guess it's been resurrected by this album. So and hopefully more to come, because Parasol they released some amazing stuff back in the day. So Mark Bassino will be on the 17th.
Yep.
And, obviously we have lots of irons in the fire. We always do. And we'll always do our best to bring quality guests to the program. And we hope we're consistently entertaining. We certainly try to be.
Yeah, indeed. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you go to materialissues.com and subscribe and tell your friends about it, because there's 159 episodes after we close this one out tonight that's archived, and you can see some unbelievable interviews. I mean, I think all of them, even the shows where we had nobody on the shows and we just talked about music and played some cool trivia games and whatnot.
Those are a lot of fun.
We had a lot of fun. So, but tons of great interviews out there. That's why we do this. We archive this stuff, so it's always available to people to watch and get into new stuff, get into old stuff. It's all great stuff in this world of music that we love. So, yeah. Good stuff.
Well, as long as we continue to have fun with this, we'll do it.
Yeah. And even not, then David and I are just going to have to get together in a room and act like we're doing a podcast. It doesn't matter. We'll be little old guys living in Copenhagen.
Yeah, Andras kept talking. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks,
Andras
Tim.
kept referring to us as middle-aged. I'm an old man officially.
Yeah.
I'm 65. I'm no middle-aged guy. I'm geriatric, and I'll be 66 on September 2nd. So
isn't that something
crazy?
Isn't that
yeah.
something? Yeah, as my dad said in his waning moments, forever doesn't seem that long anymore. And
No,
yeah.
I'm sure it doesn't. And I've been through a lot of health issues, but I hope that somehow, some way, I'm on this earth above it rather than below it.
Enjoy every sandwich, man. Enjoy every sandwich, right?
I know. Yeah, that's Warren Zevon definitely learned that perspective the hard way, unfortunately. But
yeah, indeed.
Yeah. But it's true. You really do have to. So
but
anyway,
hey, love to Rena.
Love to Chaz and love to everybody out there. And have a great rest of your week and weekend. And we will see you next week on Material Issues with Donette Thayer.
And we can July 4th show to independent music. There we go. Thank you, Andy.
For those who don't know, Andy is a master of jokes on his Facebook page. Usually a scenario where he's conversing with somebody. Sometimes it's a prospective employer who's interviewing him, and then he comes up with some double entendre, and the interviewer says, "See yourself out," or something like that. So he's a master at that kind of thing.
All right, man. We'll catch everybody later. See you next Wednesday. Materialissues.com. Chill out.
Chill out.